Women's Soccer Review Podcast with Dwayne Rollins and Jonathan Tannenwald on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Women's Soccer Review Podcast here on the Sports Podcasting Network. I'm Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Caught a little bit scrambling, I must admit, for time with my job and Dwayne's job and Kevin's job. That is the life we have, folks, as you've probably figured out by now. But I'm here with a great guest, Melina Gaspar of FutbolAce.com. She is based in Mendoza, Argentina, and has been delivering some great coverage of the NWSL Challenge Cup in Spanish, which on the whole there is not nearly enough of, and I've been very happy to see, as have a lot of folks around the league. She does a podcast of her own called La Magia del Gol, and you can find the written stuff on the website, futbolace.com, futbolace.com, and on Twitter at futbolaces, futbolaces. They cover the NWSL, the Mexican Women's League, the Australian Women's League, and a lot more. And Melina is here. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm happy to be here talking with you, and I hope we have a good episode talking about football, and thank you for the words. That's
my pleasure. We're going to do what we always do, which is review the games that got played and look ahead to the games that are coming. And unfortunately, there's not a lot to review. There's 4 games, but not a lot to talk about because there weren't a lot of goals scored. But we have to start with Portland, North Carolina. And look, it is a big deal every time those two teams get together. And you think, a lot of us thought this time, okay, finally, the Thorns are so decimated that North Carolina is going to win this game. And given how well they looked in the first round, they were probably going to win it easily. Of course not. Just the opposite. One of the all-time games in NWSL history. And I don't say that lightly. I have covered this league for a long time, so I hope that it resonates a little bit with folks that it was really an extraordinary 90 minutes of soccer, and the Thorns pulled off the upset. And Melina, as you watched it, going through the ups and downs and all of the drama, what was going on in your mind during that game?
Well, I'm a Portland Thorns fan myself, so I was a little bit nervous. Like you said, the team was very decimated. Bella Bixby was having a great tournament so far, and she couldn't start. She was injured, so things started to go south. Then in the match, we could see that Lindsey Horan also was in the questionable list, but she played on the list, and she got injured. Her leg, her hip was nagging her. She couldn't continue playing. Then Kat Reynolds, who also was injured, but then came back in this tournament, had to go out because when she was disputing a ball with Williams, got knocked out, so she needed stitches. So everything went south on the first half. Also, you could see how North Carolina started to, from the first minute, to press. And if it wasn't for all the clearances and how the defense worked out so well, things could have been very bad for the Thorns in the first half. So I was a little bit relieved at first because, the first time ended up, the first half, ended up on 0. But I was thinking, what would Mark Parsons do? And also, North Carolina has a deep bench. The team hasn't been very much changed from last season, or from the last 2 seasons. So they understand each other. The players play very well between each other, between lines. They know where any of them where it's going to be, so they can pass the ball, and someone will be there. And So I thought that North Carolina was going to make some changes at halftime and then come out stronger and then score, but they didn't. So it was like confusing, and at the same time, you could see maybe a little bit of the fact that Paul Riley didn't rotate much. So maybe that was one of the factors that made the team look a little bit gassed or with lack of ideas.
We heard Mark Parsons speak after the game about the culture of his team. And we know that the Thorns made a fairly major offseason roster overhaul, and Parsons wanted to change the culture. And he's talked about it so much that, as the saying goes, he talked about it so much that you could almost start to believe it going into that game. Except there was a problem, which that they weren't really scoring any goals. And he kept talking about how, we've got all this going right in this, that, and the other thing, but we're not scoring goals. And I know Mark pretty well. I like him a lot. And I thought to myself, Mark, you're not scoring goals. But they finally broke through in this game. And I certainly think, Melina, that this was Morgan Weaver's even more so arrival on the big stage. And what have you thought watching her in this tournament so far for being a rookie, making her professional debut this summer?
I was very excited to see her on the field because I was watching some videos of her when she was drafted. And for me, she was like a beast, full of energy. I don't know, someone will throw a long pass, and she will run after the ball. She will create spaces. She will leave one or two defenders behind with her speed. And so I was very excited to see her up front. And of course, for me, has been one of the best forwards in the team. She liked to play in the wide areas. She was creating a lot of things up front. I think the lack of chemistry, of course, had it was a thing that prevented her or the other forwards to score. But I knew at some point she was going to find the goal, and she did when it mattered the most. And the good thing I think about the goal, not just the fact that Weaver scored, but it was a team effort. I could count 5 or 6 players involved in that play, and also 10 or 11 touches between the players. So of course the team wasn't scoring. Maybe it was a lack of patience, because in the previous matches also we could see how Weaver and the other forwards started to cross the ball inside the box, and that didn't work. So maybe what Mark said to them is be a little bit more patient, and that paid off pretty well in the end.
What do you make on the North Carolina side of it, Melina? They don't lose very often, as we know. And it does tend to certainly spur them to come back and start rampaging again when they do lose. I've known their manager, Paul Riley, for a very long time, as the listeners of this show know. What do you think is next for them? Because there's going to be an amount of expansion. They're going to try to hold this team together as much as they can. Do you think that they need to make changes, or is this just the nature of a knockout football? You lose one game and that's it.
That's a pretty good question. I think for them is positive to change. I know Paul Riley said press conference that he wants to keep the team as intact as possible, that the team won't change much. But I think they need a change, like a refreshment. 1 or 2 players that can make different things, and give the team a different look. So far, they have been very successful. They have been winning all kinds of things. Maybe this just was a bad day for them. Like I said before, maybe it was just the fact that they didn't rotate much, so the players were a little bit tired. We could see Davinia, how she wasn't the same as we could see in the previous matches. how all those crosses ended up in nothing. So maybe they were a little bit out of ideas. The midfield didn't connect much with the forwards. So I think it was like 50-50. Like Portland defended pretty well, but also North Carolina didn't play the best they could that we know they can. So I think, yeah, they need a change, not maybe a big change, because so far things were pretty good for them, except for this match. But yeah, like Paul Riley also said, losing is good. You can learn from that. And also that rekindles your fire. They certainly learned a lot in 2017, when they lost the championship, and that helped them. So I think this loss is also positive for them.
I remember being at that game, actually, and some of Paul's emotions and the players' emotions after that game. And, we talk a lot. There's the Courage get a lot of, trash talk and so on from fans about the whole being the underdog when they're also a dynasty, but it's all of that stuff is not about us in the media and the fans and whatever, it's about how they motivate themselves. And Paul Riley likes to have his team with his kinds of players. And I have a hunch that even with expansion draft possibly coming, he's going to continue to do that. So we have a problem, Melina, here on the show, which is that goal that Morgan Weaver scored was the last goal scored in this tournament. There have been 3 scoreless ties since then, and they all went to penalties. And if you want to say the penalties counter, blah, okay, whatever. Somebody did put the ball in the net, yes. But Houston, Utah, Washington Sky Blue, and Reign Chicago were all scoreless ties. And my friend Tim McCauley of SB Nation made a very good point, I thought, which is that as wonderful as this tournament has been to watch, there is a dearth of top quality strikers in the NWSL right now. Sam Kerr is gone, obviously. Has that been mentioned at all, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, I know. I know it has been. And I actually think that Mike Watts, the play-by-play guy on CBS All Access, has done a very good job of being in good humor and good spirits about all the grief he takes on Twitter. I'm sure you saw the video that he put out recently about it. But we need some goals in this thing, Melina, and I'm not, as dramatic as these games were, it doesn't speak well, again, about the lack of forwards and probably also some fatigue among the players. And I might even say in that regard that if you're the kind of player who's used to playing in a World Cup, you're a little more used to this kind of a schedule. But if you're a player who's only ever played in the NWSL, you might not be, because you only play once a week in the league. What do you make of the lack of goals?
I think that there are a lot of factors involved in the lack of goals. Well, some of the international players are not here. For example, in the case of Portland, Tawin Heath used to score goals, but also she is the playmaker in the team. So if you don't have the playmaker, you won't have many opportunities to score. You need to find different possibilities. Well, Christian Press is another great goal scorer. She's not also in the tournament. Megan Rapinoe, she brings all the paraphernalia and all her talent, and she's like a scoring machine. She is not also on the tournament. So we have, Alex Morgan is another, of course. So we have many important absences. But I think also another factor is that this is a weird year for all of us, including the players. They are not used to, like you said, to play these kind of tournaments. Not all of them, at least. Also, we had many players that are not in the NWSL anymore. Lots of Australians that gone to Europe, and they used to score some goals too, like Henry Russell. And also, I don't know, Mitch Bird, she's the hell of a finisher, but she's not playing up top. She's a defender now. So I think there are a lot of different factors that combine to make us see these results. But I also think that, the players have been like, I don't know, months without having properly training. So that's another factor. You cannot expect to give them a month and a half, and then everything will flow as if anything will happen or was happening before. So I think that's the main thing here. I think goals will come. In the case of Portland, you could see that they were very patient. They were working on that, and working on that, and working on that, and they finally got it. I don't know if that's going to be the last goal we will see in this tournament, but I hope semifinals will be better. And if they go to penalties, at least I expect a 1-1, not less than that.
A lot of what we talk about up here, when we reflect on players in the NWSL, we often reflect on the U.S. players and how anything they do might, impact their standing with the U.S. national team, their ability to, move up the depth chart at certain positions, so on and so forth. And so, here is Jane Campbell of the Houston Dash, who has been sort of the number 4 goalkeeper in the depth chart. And obviously Vlatko Ananovsky knows her very well. And she sort of lost, she lost the number 3 spot to A.D. Franch, in sort of the year or so before the World Cup, because she had a couple of iffy performances with the national team. And with the Dash too. What do you think it means for her and also for the Dash to have made it into a semifinal and to probably have beaten a team that, when you simply compare the talent one against the other, you might even say it was an upset?
Well, I was very happy for the team, and I think what Clarkson said before the tournament was key, that they were playing with a chip on their shoulders and they wanted to prove everybody wrong. And, that's something that, rekindle the players, that flame they needed to go and prove everybody wrong. And they are doing it so far. And I think that's great for the league, for the team, and for those players who needed that, who need that confidence to play. And they are doing it very well compared to last year. They need a little bit more of ideas, of course, because you could see how in the first 2 matches they were awesome, maybe, or at least they were playing very good. They were looking very dangerous, and they were creating a lot of things with Shea Groom, with Daly, with Mewis. But then in the last 2 matches, we could see that they have a lack of ideas, that fire dwindle a little. So they need to regroup and go on. And for Campbell, I think she's a great goalkeeper. The thing with the NWSL is the fact that they have all the teams, I think, great goalkeepers. But they have different qualities, Campbell, everybody knows she's a great saver when you talk about PKs, but sometimes they score a goal against her. I don't remember which team was it, but she didn't have the, she stood there in the middle of goal and couldn't even dive. So those things are the things she needs to work on, the details. I don't think she's a bad keeper at all. But, for example, comparing her to Bella Bixby, I heard a press conference where Bella Bixby was talking, and she said that she needed to work on the little details. Like, she's very thorough with her training, and Nadia Younger is making sure she is very thorough with it. And I think Campbell needs that, to be like, work on the details. Once she does that, I think she will be, 10 times better than she is right now. And it will be great for the Dash to have a national team player there on the roster.
You mentioned Bella Bixby, and we should of course not overlook Britt Eckerstrom of Portland, who turned in extraordinary performance in net, with Bixby sidelined by a torn ACL that she suffered in practice a few days before the game, and of course AD Franch out. And that took it to the point where Nadia Younger had to be the backup goalkeeper in the North Carolina game, and probably will have to be for the rest of the tournament, which is kind of extraordinary. And of course now everybody is rooting for, not that anybody wants to see a goalkeeper have to lose the game, but everybody's now rooting to see whether Unger is going to have to play. Let us move on to Sky Blue beating Washington. And look, we're not going to get into the Rose Lavelle matter here. We might some point down the road. I've written, Meg Linehan of The Athletic has written, Jeff Kassouf of The Equalizer has written. We've all said it. The playing time limitations were agreed on by the players. They wanted it. Even Becca Rue, the head of the U.S. Women's Team's Players Union, came out and said that. So we've all got to put our hands up about that. There's nothing we can do if a player like Lavelle is not healthy. I'm sure Richie Burke wanted to play her for longer because, look, he wants to win. Of course he wants to win. And if U.S. Soccer wasn't paying Lavelle's salary, it would have been a different story. But that's the way it is, what it is. And hopefully someday it won't be that way. I want to talk about Sky Blue. Because A, Kylan Sheridan was amazing. And B, this is a team, and I wrote this in my match report, on the game that I wrote on Saturday. This is a team that has not won a lot in its NWSL history. This is, in fact, a team that has been quite bad in a lot of its NWSL history. And here they are going to a semifinal. And I think that was one of the biggest wins that this team has had. Yes, it was one game. Yes, it was, what does the Challenge Cup actually matter for? Blah, blah, blah. I get that. But these games, even if they don't matter as much as a normal NWSL season would, are getting a lot more exposure and a lot more attention than NWSL games usually do. And I'm willing to say, Melina, I think this was one of the Sky Blues' biggest wins in their history. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jonathan, in this. For me, Sky Blue was not, or is not, playing a showy football. They are not elegant. They are not sometimes entertaining, but they did a pretty good job against Washington. They came into this match as a clear underdog. We could see what Washington could do. They improved a lot too from last year to this one. They were fast. Lavelle is Lavelle. Sullivan was healthy, at least in the first 3 matches. And she was doing a very good work. Also, Hatch had a jump on quality. So, yeah, they were the underdogs coming into this match. But they contrasted pretty well. They stopped them, nullified them at the midfield. With this, I think a lot of this had to do with Cervoni and Cujo. They didn't let them build from behind. They pressed high, and they barely left Hatch let loose like she likes to, which was key to obtain the result they got. So in the end, I think Washington had a better chances, but Sky Blue worked pretty well to stop them, and they succeeded. We could see it. It was another 0-0 match. They went into penalties, and like you said, Sheridan was amazing. I think I don't know, all these years she has proved that she's, for me, the top goalkeeper in the league. She's very young. She's very talented. She has been playing in a team that don't help much sometimes with the defense, but nonetheless, she always appears there. She's always there, and she was also there for the penalties. Although that, for me, that last penalty taken by Washington, well, wasn't pretty great, but nonetheless, Sheridan stopped it. So yeah, I think it was the biggest upset of the tournament.
I'm going to be very interested to see what they do against Chicago. And I think this could be another scoreless draw, unfortunately. But the biggest reason why I think so is because Chicago has a problem in terms of attack. And I mentioned it to Rory Dames before the game. How do you do about the fact that your team isn't scoring? And he agreed with it. He agreed that it was not what it could be. And I had marked out Kealia Watt as one of my players to watch in the tournament coming in. And I take no pleasure in saying this, Melina. She was tasked in this tournament with stepping up and scoring the goals. And unfortunately, she hasn't done it. And we'll see if she does it against Sky Blue. But on top of that, so she didn't play against Portland. She played 78 minutes in the opener against Washington, 80 against North Carolina, 83 against Utah, 90 against the Reign. And she has 2 shots on goal in her entire time on the field in the tournament. It's troubling to me. What is it to you?
Well, the same. I think she had the clearest opportunity to score in the last match, where she goes into the box and beats 2 defenders. I don't know. She should have scored just in the first touch, but when she beat the first defender. But she didn't. She was looking for the perfect angle. I don't know what she was looking for. But she should have scored anyway after beating the second defender. And yeah, it's a big problem for Rory Dames because, in the case of Portland, they weren't scoring also, but they were creating lots of opportunities. But if we have to talk about Chicago, well, they were great defending. They were very good with it. A lot of it had to do with Julie Ertz being there. But yeah, they have a big problem, and they depended a lot of Sam Kerr last year, of course. And like Rory said, there is no player they could use to replace Sam Kerr. So he's putting that responsibility on all the team and all the players. And I think that is good. And Morgan, she scored in the first match, so she took that responsibility to heart. But now she's injured, so now comes the problem again. And also Yuki Nagasato is also injured. She did a pretty good job last year, also there in the final third. So I don't know how Rory Dames can change this. I really don't know what he can do in just these couple of days before the semifinal to change this. But yeah, he has a pretty big problem there.
So that game goes to penalties. And as soon as it does, I immediately think that Chicago's going to win the game. And the reason why I think so is because Alyssa Nair is standing there in the net. And Shirley Cruz, who I really like as a player, who is She knows Alyssa Nair plenty well. Straight over the crossbar. I wouldn't want to take a penalty against Alyssa Nair. And I can only, we already knew she was good, obviously, for a long time. But I can only imagine the impact of when you have to walk up to that spot and score a penalty on the goalkeeper that won the World Cup last year, in part by saving a penalty in one of the biggest situations of her life. I mean, the mental side of it has to play a role at that point, don't you think?
Yeah, and we could see, I was comparing Cruz to Pero Boquete. Both of them have very successful careers, pretty similar in some cases. It's an ending list of things both players have won, but nonetheless, both missed their penalties. And yeah, I think penalties are like a mental game. And Alyssa Nair, she's very quiet. She's very down-to-earth person. But to be a goalkeeper, if there is anything I learned from these games, is that if you want to be a goalkeeper, you have to have a very strong mentality. And when you see Cruz against Nair, you knew, I knew that Nair was going to be successful. Not just because what you said, but because, Shirley wasn't having a good tournament. She also didn't play at all against Portland. And she had, for me, of all the matches she played, this one was the best for her because she connected a little bit more. I saw her stopping the advances of Chicago in the midfield. I saw a lot of positive things from her, but she wasn't having a good tournament, and that showed up in that penalty.
And I loved, by the way, Nair's teammates swarmed her after the last penalty, and just like she did in the World Cup last year, she told them to back off her, and they just kept coming, and she was finally like, okay, fine.
Yeah, that moment was great. Yeah, continue.
What do you make of the rain? And they have very good players, and everybody wanted to pound them out of the gate because all they knew about Farid Ben-Stidi as a manager was what he did to Lindsey Horan.
Mm-hmm.
And, he said at one point during the tournament that he appreciated having the support of the players. And everybody sort of looked at that and said, well, do you really have the support of the players if you're not winning? And we came to realize over the last few days that they were in the tournament, including from a really great video that the Reigns social media crew put together. Yeah, actually, no, he does have the support of his players. They quite like him. And I'm going to be very interested to see what he does with this team over the long term. We'll see whether Leon sends him any reinforcements, obviously. But what do you make of the rain, and what do you make of him as a manager so far? Granting, obviously, that I know you focus on Portland, so you might be inclined to have a certain opinion on the matter.
Yeah, well, I think it's the best thing is not to judge from the beginning, because you have to hear the two bells, like they say. I heard what he said to Lindsey Horan, but then I was talking with a friend. He knows a lot about football from every country, and he told me, but what he did or what he said made Lindsey Horan, but she is today. Made her be, but she is today. And I started to think that, and Lindsey Horan herself has said that after that she started to train more, to be more mentally tough, and I don't know, things happen sometimes for a reason. And if there is another thing I learned these past few days, was that you also heard negative comments about Rich Berg, but now, also the before he came into Washington to be the coach of Washington, and when you heard different players from Washington to talk about him, they recognize he yelled at them and they were mad and they wouldn't speak to him for days. But then everything will be okay, and he was a great coach, and all the team loved him and the team loves him. So maybe it's the same thing with Farid. It's like different kind of coaching. I'm not saying that what he said to Lindsey Horan was all right, that was good, because there are ways to say the things. But if the players on the Reign were thanking him for the support, Sofia Huerta also said that, thank you, coach, for believing in me again. And when you also take a look at Shirley Cruz's career, you can see that there is a constant on her career, and that is Farid Ben-Stidi. Also, she said that when she got to Lyon, she was very, very young. She knew anybody there. Nobody knew who she was. And the first person she met was Farid Ben-Stidi. And she didn't even know that guy was her new coach. But she said that he was very kind to her. He believed in her and also encouraged her to be better, to work on the physical part, because she had the technical part. So you hear like one bad thing about him, but a lot of good things about him. So that made me think that maybe it's not like he's not the bad guy here. And about the Reign, I think Farid Ben-Stidi of course, he's an European coach. He was a coach for many years of different French teams. He also was a coach there in China. So he brings a very different style to the NWSL, where we know they play very direct, and it will take some time for him to make his team to play like he wants. But I think once he gets there, well, the Reign will be a very good team, because he also has a roster that he can work with. And also he said that he wants to bring one or two players that can help him. And we know he knows a lot of different players from Lyon, PSG, and who knows what other teams. So I think if he can bring two more quality players onto the team, well, it will be very good for them next year.
So we go to the semifinals, and I'm inclined to think that Portland and Chicago are the favorites, although I realize that's kind of obvious to say. I actually think that Portland might be the favorite to win the whole thing at this point. But then again, I thought Chicago was the team most capable of beating North Carolina. So what do you think? What are your predictions for the winners?
Oh, well, in this tournament, this has been pretty crazy, but I think that Portland should win against Houston. And then Chicago Sky Blue will be very interesting. If they go down to PKs, that would be a very interesting match.
It could be a while. That's the late game, by the way. So it might be it's for those who don't know, and Argentina is an hour east time zone wise of where I am in the east of the United States. So you're going to be up very late on Wednesday night.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know if that goes down to PKs, it will be very interesting, because you will have like Sheridan against Nair, and it will be very interesting. But given the history, I should pick Chicago.
And let's see here. Lastly, I want to ask you about watching this and covering this from Argentina. What's it been like?
A very new, interesting experience. I'm grateful because if it wasn't for this new situation we have for a while, it wouldn't have been possible. I don't know, press conferences or with the players, with the coach. That wouldn't have been possible because I wouldn't be able to be there. So I'm grateful, but I'm kind of getting used to Zoom and all those tools we are using now because I wasn't used to them. So it has been like good for one side, but the other was a little bit challenging. Also for the time zones, But no, it has been good. Yeah. Overall.
It's great to hear, and I'm one of many people in the United States who hopes that women's football in Argentina, continues to grow and become a bigger deal. I have tried to watch from afar what has gone on with the Argentine national team. I think folks who know me well know I was at the Scotland-Argentina game at the World Cup last year. And that was a pretty remarkable night, I'm sure, for you and a lot of other people, not just for the team and the fans in the stadium. And hopefully the time will come when Argentina is once again supplying players to the NWSL and building up its own national team and so on. Melina, this has been terrific. Thanks very much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's great to talk to you and also great to talk to other journalists that cover the league. I'm learning a lot from you guys, so thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, it's great to be able to do it. Before we wrap up, I want to give shout outs to two of my colleagues in this business who made some announcements on Monday that you all should know about. One is Jamie Goldberg of the Oregonian, who, as you all know, I think covered soccer for the paper for quite a while. The Thorns of the NWSL, the Timbers of MLS, the U.S. national teams, and so on. Moved across the newsroom to the business desk, so she won't be covering sports anymore. We will miss her around the circuit. And also Ileana Limon Romero, the sports editor of the Orlando Sentinel. Happy belated birthday. Since Monday is her birthday, as we're recording this, it won't be out until afterward. And thank you for everything that you do for giving the sport of soccer, men's and women's, an incredible platform at the Orlando Sentinel. And certainly thank you for the help you've given me over the years from afar, including, as folks know, I've done some freelancing over time for Pro Soccer USA. We will close it out there. Melina, again, thank you. For Melina Gaspar of futbolace.com. And for my colleagues, Kevin Laramie and Dwayne Rollins, who hopefully will be back next time around, this is Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer, thanking you for listening to the Women's Soccer Review here on the Sports Podcasting Network.